Imagine this. There's a force inside you. It's not your mind, not your logic, not even your willpower. It's something more ancient, more primal, more misunderstood. It's your sexual energy, but not in the way most people talk about it. Not the loud, explicit version splashed across social media or whispered in shame behind closed doors. Not the kind that's reduced to lust, performance, or reproduction. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dared to look deeper into the human soul, believed this energy was far more profound. To him, sexual energy was a symbol, a metaphor, a raw, untamed current of life that, if understood, could transform suffering into creativity and confusion into meaning. Modern culture rarely tells us the truth about this energy. It either tells us to suppress it, bury it beneath guilt and silence, or to indulge it blindly, chase every impulse, every fantasy, without asking why. But what if both paths are wrong? What if this energy wasn't meant to be controlled or consumed, but integrated? That's the radical idea Jung offered. Not repression, not addiction, but transformation. He saw sexual energy as a reflection of the deepest parts of our psyche. It wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about connection, creation, awakening. Jung's view stood in sharp contrast to his mentor, Sigmund Freud. Freud believed human behavior was driven primarily by sexual instinct. He saw libido as a biological force, a kind of pressure valve for unconscious desire. Jung started there, but he didn't stay. He broke away from Freud and said, "No, libido isn't just sex. It's life energy. It's the fuel behind everything we long for. It animates our art, our ambition, our love, our spirituality." Sexual energy, he believed, is just one expression of a much bigger force. And here's where it gets interesting. This energy can evolve. At its lowest level, it shows up as obsession, addiction, or compulsion. We chase relationships that destroy us. We get lost in fantasies we don't understand. We seek connection but find chaos. But at its highest level, it becomes creativity, vision, devotion, even spiritual awakening. And the journey from low to high begins when we stop running from the energy and start listening to it. Let's talk about the shadow. This is one of Jung's most powerful ideas, and one of the most uncomfortable. The shadow is the part of you that you deny, the desires you don't talk about, the fantasies you pretend don't exist, the cravings, the rage, the lust, the longing. When you push these into the unconscious, they don't disappear. They gain power. They begin to act from the dark, not as monsters, but as sabotaging patterns. Think about it. Why do so many of us self-destruct right after a breakthrough? Why do people who seem calm and disciplined suddenly blow up their lives in moments of impulsive passion? Jung would say, it's because they never made peace with their shadow. They never turned and faced what they were running from. Here's something Jung said that struck me. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That includes the darkness of our desires. But here's the beautiful part. That same energy, the one you're afraid of, can be your teacher. Let me ask you, have you ever felt a surge of inspiration so intense it almost felt erotic? Have you ever been in the middle of painting, dancing, building something, and felt this aliveness moving through you? Beyond thought, beyond logic? That's the same root energy. Sexual energy isn't just about reproduction. It's about expression. It's the drive to create something from within. A piece of music, a business, a poem, a connection. And when we pretend it's only about sex, we miss the magic. Ancient traditions understood this long before modern psychology. In Indian Tantra, there's the concept of kundalini, a coiled serpent energy at the base of the spine. When awakened, it rises upward, passing through energy centers in the body, ultimately leading to spiritual awakening. To Jung, this mirrored his idea of individuation, the psychological journey to become whole. He saw parallels between the spiritual ascent of kundalini and the psychological integration of the self. They're both about one thing, reclaiming your power. But before we can rise, we have to stop leaking. That's right, leaking. So much of our energy is lost in distraction, scrolling endlessly, chasing validation, getting stuck in fantasies that go nowhere. Jung didn't say don't feel. He said, feel with awareness. Channel it, shape it, let it move through art, through purpose, through healing. Because when sexual energy is unconscious, it controls you. When it's conscious, it liberates you. Let me share a story. There was a woman I knew. Let's call her Maya. She grew up in a strict household where desire was shameful. Any sign of sensuality was met with punishment or silence. So she buried it. She became the perfect daughter, the overachiever, the good girl. But as the years went by, she felt more and more numb, disconnected from her body, from joy, from life. It wasn't until she took up dance, purely on a whim, that something awakened. The movement brought her back to herself, not in a sexual way, but in a soul way. She felt the energy rising, not as lust, but as life. She began to see that what she had suppressed wasn't bad, it was sacred. And that shift changed everything. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. What are you doing with your energy? Are you leaking it through mindless habits? Suppressing it through fear? Or are you learning to work with it? To trust it? To channel it? Carl Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to do that, you must walk into the fire of your own desire. Not to burn, but to be transformed. You see, most of us go through life believing we know who we are. We have names, jobs, roles. We have likes and dislikes, values we claim, goals we chase. But Jung didn't call that the self. He called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive. A necessary mask, yes, but still just a mask. Beneath it lies something deeper. A vast interior world of forgotten dreams, disowned emotions, and untapped power. This is the place where your sexual energy lives, not just as desire, but as symbolic fire. It fuels your longing not just to be with someone, but to become someone. And here's the twist Jung invites us to consider. What if the people we're drawn to, intensely, obsessively, even irrationally, are not who we think they are? What if they are mirrors? Mirrors of our anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies we've denied, suppressed, or neglected. When you chase the mysterious, emotionally rich partner, you may be chasing the anima. When you fall for the confident, driven, grounded figure, you might be chasing the animus. Not them, but you, the version of you that you've left behind. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, let's call him Theo, who kept falling for the same kind of woman. Elegant, emotionally intense, always just a little out of reach. Each relationship felt like a cosmic connection and ended like a slow disaster. After the third heartbreak, he finally asked the right question. Why do I keep choosing this? Through therapy, journaling, and real self-inquiry, Theo discovered that he wasn't chasing love. He was chasing his anima, the emotionally expressive, intuitive, artistic part of himself that had been buried under decades of trying to be a man. He didn't just miss these women, he missed himself. And that insight changed everything. Jung said that the journey of individuation is the path back to wholeness. Not perfection, not control, but wholeness. And that includes reclaiming your sexual energy, not just managing it or resisting it, but understanding it. Because when this energy is repressed, it doesn't dissolve. It turns into projection, addiction, obsession, emotional hunger that never gets fed. But when it's integrated, something powerful happens. You stop chasing others to feel whole. You begin creating from your core. Relationships shift. Desires become clearer. Temptation loses its grip. It's the difference between being possessed by energy and being empowered by it. And that transformation doesn't come from escape. It comes from descent. Jung often said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." That means you must go inward, into your fears, into your shame, into your fantasies, not to indulge them blindly, but to listen to what they're trying to say. Every image that turns you on, every longing that stirs something in you, is telling you something about your soul. If you're willing to listen, truly listen, you begin the alchemical process Jung wrote about. You take the raw material of your unconscious and you refine it. But let's be honest, this is not easy work. It requires solitude. It requires brutal honesty. It requires facing the parts of yourself you were told to hate. But what's on the other side of that? Freedom. Not the kind that comes from doing whatever you want, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and choosing from that place. When you reclaim your sexual energy, you stop leaking power. You stop living on the surface. You begin to move from a deeper place, where your desires are no longer enemies, but messengers. This is the deeper truth Jung hinted at, not in grand proclamations, but through symbol, myth, and metaphor. Your sexual energy is not the obstacle on the path. It is the path. It is the fire that melts the false self, that reveals the shadow, that awakens the soul. It is the energy of union, not just with another, but with the forgotten parts of yourself. When you stop fearing it, when you stop projecting it, when you hold it with respect, you begin to see the world and yourself with new eyes. And that's when the real journey begins. Not the search for someone to complete you, but the sacred task of completing yourself. What happens when we don't integrate this force within us? That's the question Jung quietly asked, one that echoes louder the longer we avoid it. When sexual energy is left unconscious, it doesn't sleep peacefully in the background. It turns inward. It twists itself. It mutates into confusion, addiction, longing, projection. It hijacks our decisions. It sabotages our relationships. It feeds fantasies that drain our real lives. And it does so silently. You don't even realize it's happening until one day you wake up and ask, why am I stuck in the same patterns? Why do I keep chasing things that never satisfy me? Why do I feel empty even after I get what I thought I wanted? This is the price of unexamined desire. Jung wasn't a moralist. He didn't warn us to be good or follow rules. He warned us because unconscious energy is dangerous. He saw how religion tried to suppress sexuality through shame, how modern culture tried to indulge it through fantasy, and how neither path leads to transformation. Suppression leads to shadow. Indulgence leads to addiction. Only integration leads to awakening. So what does integration look like? It's not about controlling your urges through force. It's not about denying your attraction or pretending to be above desire. It's about entering into a conscious relationship with the fire within you. Jung often compared sexual energy to a wild animal. If you lock it in a cage, it will go mad. If you let it roam without guidance, it may destroy. But if you meet it with respect, if you listen to it, work with it, it becomes your companion, your ally in transformation. This means letting go of fantasy, not by destroying imagination, but by seeing through the illusion. It means facing what arouses you, not to act on it blindly, but to ask why. What part of you is calling for attention? What are you trying to reclaim through pleasure, control, validation? The real hunger inside you is not just for intimacy, it's for union, not just with another person, but with the disowned parts of yourself. Let's go back to projection for a moment, because this is where so many of us get lost. You fall in love, not with someone as they truly are, but with what they represent, an image your unconscious has painted for you. You imagine they'll save you, complete you, make you feel alive again. But no one can carry that weight, because that image, it's not them. It's you, your longing, your missing pieces, your soul's cry for reunion. That's why we become disillusioned. We ask people to play the role of our inner archetypes, then blame them when they fail. Jung wasn't telling us to stop loving. He was telling us to love more honestly, from wholeness, not from need. And that brings us to the ultimate point. Sexual energy, at its core, is not about sex. It's about truth. The truth of who you are. The truth of what you long for. The truth of what you've hidden, denied, or feared within yourself. It is the energy that can connect body and soul, instinct and insight, rawness and reverence. And when awakened, not indulged, not repressed, it becomes the engine of your becoming. You begin to create, not just to distract yourself, but to express yourself. You begin to relate, not to escape loneliness, but to grow in depth. You begin to see beauty without the need to possess it. Boo. You must give up the comfort of illusion. You must surrender the fantasy of someone else saving you. You must walk into the fire of your own contradictions and stay there long enough to be transformed. This is the alchemy Jung spoke of, turning the base metal of instinct into the gold of awareness. Not by denial, not by escape, but by relationship. And the relationship begins with the self. So now, I ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped fearing your desire? What would you create? If you turned your longing into music, into movement, into story, who would you become? If you held your sexual energy not as shame, but as sacred? This is not a theory. This is a choice. And it's one only you can make. You don't become whole by getting rid of your darkness. You become whole by embracing it, by bringing light to it, by realizing that what you once called dangerous was really powerful. And now that power is asking you a question. Will you run from it or walk with it? Because deep down, your soul already knows the answer. And maybe that burning desire inside you is not a sin, not a weakness, but the voice of the divine in disguise calling you home.